So we're up to round 3 in part 1, which is the process. And what this looks at is, what needs to change. So you want to look at your processes and start by, identifying the outcomes, the desired outcomes. So, what do you want to happen? And if you're not getting the outcomes that you want, then something has to change, either the inputs or your processes. So it could be that you don't have the right people involved in the conversation. It could be that, as is so often the case, you just follow the same patterns that you've done over and over again in the past. You have the same conversation the same way because you fall into those patterns or those habits. It could be that, there are some people who have different expectations for what this conversation should be, past history, whatever. But anyway, so it may be that you need to change the inputs, but it could also be that you need to change the process. And there's some questions on this page that kind of help you guide that. How is the conversation conducted? Do we need some rules of engagement? Do we need an observer or somebody who plays the role of kind of referee to say, foul or whatever, you're interrupting or that sort of thing. In looking at the topic that we've chosen, where do you think the issues are? Are they in, because definitely I think we all agree we're not getting the outcomes that we want because we don't seem any closer to solving the problem. Would you say the problem is in the inputs or the processes or both?
I think there's a little of both. I think our listening habits culturally have probably aren't as strong as they could
We
be.
seem to have kind of a competitive approach to resolving problems, that we fight to win.
Power imbalances. I think it's really important that everybody has a voice.
Okay.
And so it's, I guess that would be a process. But I think the expectations too, by clarifying what area we're going to work on.
Excuse me for just a minute. Go ahead, keep talking.
We're going to work on that, then people can have some similar expectations. Okay, we're not solving the whole problem, but maybe we can take this little chunk and work on it.
We don't have, as ordinary citizens, we don't have a lot of power to control the situation, maybe kind of clarifying where we can make a difference would help toward, more cooperation.
Mm-hmm. And that one might be one that is a harder approach for this particular problem. But if we had chosen, say, climate change, we could all do different things individually. We don't have to wait for somebody else to tell us what to do. We can make changes. But with this particular problem, we can't really, there are things that we could do. We could be volunteers. We could help out at the borders or help, make donations and that sort of thing. But this one would be a harder one for us to solve as individuals.
Right.
But we could certainly find ways that we could work together to solve the problem.
Right.
We were just talking about laws too. I don't really know what the laws on the books are.
Getting more information, I think, as to what that.
So that would be one of the inputs, that we probably need more prior knowledge about what are the laws and what laws are being broken and how do they typically enforce those laws, or and also just what's different now, what's happening now that's different from what's happened in the past. Is it just sheer numbers, or?
I think part of it is, well, you can say which comes first, but it's been so politicized right now that in a way that stopped a lot of just regular conversations about it. Because it aligns you in people's eyes. If you start espousing one idea compared to another, you're sorted into which camp you're in.
Right.
I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I think you're right.
It's a divisive
It has
issue.
been, you're either with this political party or this political party, but it's really not a political issue.
Right.
But it has
become that. And I think we have to separate out to It's a multi-level problem, because first we have the people that are here legally, but maybe they have a visa that's going to, there's that group that, there's the group that are on the path to citizenship, they become citizens, then that's one path. The other is when you have someone that's granted asylum or whatever, or they're allowed to come for X amount of time, and then what happens? There's no system to really track how long the people stay, so people overstay. So there's that whole issue. And then there's the new groups that are coming that are totally not in the system yet.
I think we're experiencing a time of change. The multiple people that are coming now are enduring their own political, economic problems, which has forced them to move, which has happened throughout history. I mean, you could give it a historical perspective, but I think that change is a challenge right now, which is complicating the issue.
So maybe one of the things that needs to change is the process of what we were just talking about earlier, of identifying what's the conflict and what are we going to try to address first.
Right.
What would be the first aspect? So maybe it could be finding out what the laws are and what laws need to change or that sort of thing, or what's different, but not having a process set, and so we just go around and around in circles. We try to solve this, well, we can't solve that, so we move to that.
Right.
And so, maybe if we had a process for identifying what part to deal with first, and then creating kind of a step-by-step approach to how we're going to address this bigger problem.